Yeah, a little chilly today. I don't know what it's like there, but boy, it's doesn't feel like summer anymore here.
I know I have to have my little jacket here on because the windows are open.
Oh boy. Um, well, so let's jump to it pretty quickly. So you
All
said you
right,
have QGIS downloaded.
I do, and I've found a nifty website through Indiana government that has a lot of layers.
Oh, good. Okay.
So
Um, have you downloaded any of them yet or not?
yeah, I downloaded one, two layers right now.
Okay. So there are a number of things about QGIS. Some of the good things are it's free, which is good and accessible. Um, you can harness a fair bit of the power of ArcGIS, but not quite all. So ArcGIS, especially ArcPro now, makes things called MXD files, and you can't easily import those into QGIS. There are some ways you can get them in, but in those MXD files are really just small files that are basically pointers to other files. And anything that's called a shape file, a GeoJSON file, a GeoPackage file, those are all files that you can basically just click on the file and drag it into the left side of QGIS and it'll open. So have you opened any files yet or not?
Yeah, I opened one for the geology of it's bedrock geology.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and share your screen with me? And I think that might be the easiest way. And I'll just talk you through some of the things that you can do on QGIS with this first layer.
All right. Uh, so we need to videos. Where do you share screen? I have not had to do this yet. Sorry.
Um, you can go, if you go down to the very bottom, there should be a green thing that says share screen.
Oh, I didn't. Why didn't I see that?
Oh, don't worry.
There we go.
Yeah, so there we go. So we can both see your screen now.
All right.
Yeah, so this is great. So go ahead and we'll work with this for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're going to want to do to start off with, let's just talk about some of the things that you see on your screen here.
All right.
And I need to somehow, I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, hold on a second here. Yeah, go ahead and click yes to this. So this is kind of
Okay.
cool.
Oh, I have to open my system preferences first. But...
Yeah, and then I can actually drive your computer.
Oh, okay, cool.
So that'll, see, it might be,
Zoom.
yeah, okay.
All right. And then that, and then you should.
Okay, it says I
able
can
to?
control your screen now. You can control Odin's screen. But it says I'm controlling your screen.
You've got it.
Okay. It's slow, but okay. So just like most programs, you know, you've got these toolbars up at the top, and there's a whole bunch of different things. A lot of them are pretty self-explanatory. So that's useful. This top row, a lot of these things you'll recognize. You know, that blank piece of paper, start a new file. The folder thing is to look up files. This, you know, little floppy disk icon is for saving. If you skip over to the hand thing lets you grab, if you got that clicked on, that lets you grab and drag this around the screen. So that's a handy tool to know about, and you'll use that a fair bit. You can also, most of these things, yeah, pan to map selection, pan map to selection. It just lets you zoom in to a specific spot you've selected. Obviously, zoom in, zoom out. So a bunch of these things are pretty common. Some of these things you'll have to learn how to use. Another really important button is this identify features.
Yeah.
If I click on identify features and I come down and click on one of these boxes, it tells me all this information and highlights that this geologic unit occurs in 2 places. It selects the unit,
Oh,
and it
interesting.
also pulls up this little file this is all the data that's actually part of that file that you downloaded. So when you first download a map, one of the things about most GIS files, it's not just that you have a bunch of polygons here, but there's also a data table, and this data table actually has all this information for every polygon on the map.
Oh, cool.
And this is, you know, it's really one of the critical things. When you first look at the program, it looks like, oh, this is great, you make maps, but it goes well beyond that, because
Yeah.
we can actually sort this by rock type. We can sort it by rock age. We can sort it by units, unit name, basically anything that's in the table. That's all information that we can use to not only change the way the map looks, but also this is information that we can sort, and we can do calculations. There's all kinds of things we can do. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this for now, and you'll see when I clicked on that, there also this information opened on the right as well. So there's several different functions where when you click on them, you'll get a panel on the right that gives you information, lets you see different things, etc. So I'm going to just turn that off again for a moment. Now, one of the things we want to be able to see is we want to be able to see we come down to panels and click on layers. So generally, this is a panel you want to open on the left, and we can take this and make this smaller. But this is kind of the standard setup. If it doesn't open up like this, you can just go into View. I went to View. I came down to Panels, and these are all different panels you could click on, and they would pop up either on the left or the right. And a lot of these panels you can detach. And it's good to take notes. I'm also videoing this. I'm recording this. So
Oh, great.
I'll post this as well. Yeah. And so panels, you'll see there's lots of different things you can do with panels. Toolbars, several of these toolbars are already up, but you can actually add more. So it's just worth exploring a bunch of these things. But generally, this is the way I like to have this set up. So you can see the layers on the left, and you can see your map in the middle.
Okay.
Okay. And remember, all you did so far is you just literally clicked on a file and drug it into the program. Okay. So now if we look at this file, there's a bunch of great things here. If you just put the mouse on the file like I did, it not only tells you that it's a file that's got polygons and it gives you the title, but also pretty importantly, it tells you where this file is saved. So one of the really critical things about being effective in GIS is about it's about organization, because you'll get a lot of files very quickly, and as you start to process things, you'll be making files. And so you want to sort of think about, where am I going to store all these files? You can store them on OneDrive or something like that that's online. It'll be a little bit slower accessing the data online as opposed to accessing the data if you have everything on your hard drive. So if you have enough space, a lot of times what I try to do when I'm working on a project, I'll have all the information for the project on my hard drive. And then if I stop working on the project for a while, I save it to an external hard drive. I save it to OneDrive. And then the next time I'm going to do a bunch of work on the project, I just drag the whole folder back into my hard drive, because the computer can access the files faster that way.
Makes sense.
Okay. All right, so a couple of things about the bedrock. If I left mouse click on this, sorry, right mouse click. Hello. Uh-oh. Okay, I think it's just going slow here. Yeah, so if I right mouse click on that file, now I get a bunch of options. I can zoom to layer. This is useful if you have a bunch of information open and you got maps at different scales. You can always, if you lose, like if you digitize some small polygon, or like you had your soil information in here, it's just gonna be a tiny, tiny dot on the map because it's really detailed. And if you lose something, you can always use this feature to zoom to whatever layer you're looking for. We don't have to do that right now because our layer is obvious. You can click show feature count. That'll tell you how many features are in the data table that goes with this. You can copy the layer. You can rename the layer. You can duplicate the layer. Sometimes if you're going to modify a map and you think you might want a pristine copy, it's good to duplicate a layer, give it a different name, even if it's just like Bedrock Geology V2s, you know, it's version 2, and then actually work off that file. So if you make any modifications that in the end you don't like, you always have the original file that's kind of unaltered. Okay. So the next thing that's really important is this button that says Open Attribute Table. So if I click on that, so this is all the information that's actually in this file. So it's not just the polygons, it's not just the map, but you have all this information about the map. And so working with the data table is really one of the really powerful things about a GIS. You not only have a map, but you also have a data table that goes with it. So for this data table, we can scroll over, we can see this is all the information. A lot of this is sort of geologic information about formation, stuff like that. Lithology, that is useful, that's rock type. And one of the neat things about this, immediately, if I double click on lithology or just click once, now I've sorted everything by term. So so if I wanted to find all the soils or all the areas in Indiana that have coal, if I select this feature and I hold shift down and I select all of those and I pull this down, if you have something selected in the table, it highlights it in the map.
Oh, okay.
So it's very easy to see different units very quickly using this. But I could also copy and export these coal units and put them in a new table, and then I could make a map that just shows coal and not show anything else.
Oh, okay, cool.
So these data tables are useful because you can mine them for information. You can delete stuff. You can customize a table to whatever information you want.
Mm-hmm.
So that's useful to play around with. I don't want to get into too much detail. You can like if I click this, now it deselects everything. So now your map's back to normal. The one other thing I think I want to show you quickly, and you can play with this, because this is another really powerful thing. We can add information to this table. Okay, so if I click on this button, this little abacus, it's going to ask me what I want to do. And so any of these fields that are already existing, I could change them if I want to, just by hitting Update Existing Field, but I can also create new fields. So for example, one thing that would be interesting would be to know the area of these units. Like how many hectares are they? How many cubic meters or square meters? So I can say I want to create a new field. I'm going to call it area. Because it's not going to be an integer, it's going to be, you know, a decimal number. I'll click on that. And then I can come over to, there's a whole bunch of presets. I can actually type my own equations in here. If I have numbers, I could type my own equations. But for something like area, it's kind of complex. So I can come down to geometry, not general, sorry, geometry. And there's a whole bunch of geometric functions here. And if I double click on this $ area, and it tells me what this function is going to do, all I have to do is click on that. and say, okay. And now if I scroll over to the right, I've just calculated the area of all of these polygons.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. So if you knew the thickness of the geologic units and you added those thicknesses here, I could do another calculation where I multiply thickness times area to get volume. So it becomes almost like Excel. It's a little bit different, but it's almost like a spreadsheet. You can actually calculate your own things in here. And then, if you wanted to know what, well, you tell me. So if I wanted to know now, if I wanted to know what geologic unit had the largest area on this map, what would I do?
You would, I would sort by
Yeah, click
area.
one more time.
What?
Click it once more. Yeah. Okay. So when you first clicked it, it sorted, but it put the smallest one on top.
Oh, okay.
And so it's always going to either sort alphabetical A to Z, or if you click it, it'll go the reverse. So again, with sort of 2 minutes, you've already just calculated for yourself that this Silurian, the Cayugan Silurian limestone, it has got the most area in the state of Indiana.
That's really neat.
So that is, this is something, there's lots to learn here, but getting into the data table pretty quickly, I think, is useful, because it's a really great way to manipulate data, and right away you can start calculating stuff. Like if you import the soil polygons from the Web Soil Survey, that will come in as a table, and it'll just have a very limited amount of information, but it won't have area. So right away now, you already know how you can then add in a calculation of the area for each of those soil polygons.
Makes sense.
Okay. So anyway, so that's I'm going to click out of this. And our lesson's going to end here pretty quickly, because I got another student I got to talk to at 11. But you can play around with this now. So a couple other things that are kind of in the surrounds, right? So this is our active work area. These are our layers. Like I said, it's pretty good if you just put the cursor on something, it'll tell you what that button does. So definitely should play around. But another thing that's really important to understand is down at the bottom. So if you look at the bottom, you see this coordinate.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you have any idea what these units are as I move around?
I would initially assume, I was going to say longitude, latitude, but that doesn't look like it.
No.
I don't know.
So this is a kind of really common map unit that we don't you don't get much of this until you get into like the earth sciences. This is called the Universal Transmercator Unit.
Okay.
UTM. And so it's like latitude and longitude. There's a north, and usually a north coordinate and an east or west coordinate. UTMs basically assume that for a small part of the world's flat. And so it doesn't distort shape. So when you're looking at larger scale maps, things look more like we expect if you're plotting it in UTM coordinates instead of latitude and longitude.
Okay.
And the UTM coordinates, the units of UTM coordinates are meters. So when you're measuring distance and things like that, you're measuring units in meters as opposed to degrees of latitude, degrees of longitude, which you'd have to go through some kind of calculation to say, well, that's this many feet, it's this many miles, it's this many kilometers, whatever. So UTM is actually much easier. It's called a projection, but it's much easier projection to work in when you're making maps. But you can actually change that. But one of the key things is, so anywhere I move the mouse, it tells me what the coordinate is. And that tells me that this file is geographically referenced. It's georeferenced file, so that's important. The next thing is you can see the scale. And it tells me what the scale is right now. If I want to make this, so this is 1 to 1.7 million. If I wanted to go to 1 to, that's 1 to a million. Yeah, if I go 1 to a million, now it's going to zoom in a fair bit. If I went, if I go 1 to 5,000, now it's really detailed. So that's probably too much. We're in the middle of some strange geologic unit. You can also zoom in and out with the mouse. Okay, so again, you want to play around with all these features. There's a magnifier that you can use to zoom in. That's another way to zoom in. You can actually rotate this. So if you have a map that's in a weird coordinate system, you can actually rotate it to make it change however you want. If you want to look at Indiana on its side, you can look at Indiana on its side, which you probably don't necessarily want to do, but there might be some reasons you do that.
Yeah.
The last thing is this EPSG. And if we double click on this, if you put it right there now, you can see it says current CRS. That's basically the coordinate system. The current coordinate system for this is NAD 83 UTM zone 16. We can change that if we want. If we double click on this, it's going to come up with a menu, and we can tell it. I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to tell it that, well, I think we're going to stick with this actually. But you can see, you can come up here and you can change this to you can change it to geographic. So we could come down and change to, let's see, WGS. Well, here, let me search for it. If I say latitude, WGS. Well, here, we'll just choose one. It doesn't matter. And I say, okay. Now the shape is changed.
Yeah, it looks a bit different.
It looks a bit different. And look at the coordinates now. Now the coordinates are latitude and longitude.
Yeah.
Okay. But that means all the measurements are going to be degrees, minutes, and seconds. And so that's just not a very convenient unit to work in. So usually we work in these UTM zones. So let's come back and go to, see, I think it was NAD 83 and UTM zone. I think it was zone 16 north, yeah. And if you're unsure, like I think it's NAD 83. Yeah, NAD 83 UTM zone 16. If I click on this, it actually shows me on the map where that zone is.
Yeah.
So if I'm unsure, then I just do that, and now we get back to oh no, I have to. Apply. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so now we're back to where we were. Anyway, so that's really important. We'll talk about that more. But the big thing is sometimes when you pull in data files, they're not in the same coordinate system. So usually the program will actually change on the fly. If you drag another map in here, the program will automatically say, oh, that's not the right coordinate system. It'll give you a warning, but then it'll try to reproject it into the coordinate system you already have.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes that causes problems, so that's important to be aware. Okay, so the last thing I'll show you to play around with for the day, like it'd be nice for this map to not all be one color.
Oh, yeah.
So the next thing we can do, if we right mouse click on Bedrock Geology, we go down to Properties. If I click on that, now this is going to let me change the properties of the map. So if I come over there so we can see the map, if I want to add, I know there's lots of information in the data table. So if I go down and I click on this categorized, and then I choose a category, right? So these are all the things now that are all the different things in the table. I can click on name, I can tell it to classify, and now it goes through to the table and it sees all the names of the units. It assigns them a color. And if I say apply,
Oh, okay.
now we have a color map. And that's the geologic map of the state of Indiana, colored by units. So that's great. But what if we, instead of this, let's get rid of all these for a second. Let's say actually we'd really like a map of rock types. That actually might be more interesting for soils. So now we can classify, and it'll show us there's only a few rock types in Indiana. That's fine. But now I can come over here, and now the map is colored by rock type.
Yeah.
And so you can see that there's some polygons that have the same color, but that means that that these two different geologic units are the same type of rock. So if you were interested in finding all the soils that are formed on shale in the state of Indiana, here's a map that you can quickly look at to say, oh, look at all these things. These are all, any soil, in these polygons formed on top of a parent material that is that's shale. Now, obviously, as we talked about before, like up here, the shale may have glacial till on it, and so the glacial till might have a bigger influence on the soil than the bedrock. But that's like a research question, right? This could be a question now. You could say, okay, my research hypothesis is that every soil I find in this purple area is going to have like textural characteristics derived from forming on a shale. And then you could go out and sample it and test that hypothesis. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Okay, so this is just a brief start. I'll look and see if I have time on Thursday, we might be able to another brief session, and I'll actually show you how to take this map and make it look good so that like you can actually produce a map that you would want to like include in a paper or something like that.
Yeah.
But some of the things you want to do in the meantime, some things that might be useful, well, think about things that might be useful on this map. What are things that might be useful to show on this map to help you locate yourself, for example? Like, what are other things that you see on normal maps sometimes?
Like, I don't know, first thing that comes to mind is like rivers and kind of that would help me kind of orientate everything pretty easily, or counties. I know my county would be good.
So part of your assignment for Thursday, quickly check. If you check on Indiana GIS, it may even be the same site you went to. You'll find files for roads. You'll find files for counties. You may find files for city boundaries. You'll find files for rivers. You might find population files. There's all kinds of stuff you can find very quickly that they're not necessarily, your map's not about roads, but sometimes it's useful to show on a map, even a geologic map, where roads are, so people trying to figure out how do I get to see that rock, they know what roads to take. Okay. So I got my next caller is online.
All right.
So I'm going to I'll give you back control of your screen somehow. Yeah, there we go. And so that's your first lesson.